Hey, what's going on YouTube? Welcome to another League of Legends guide. Today, we are covering top lane Poppy.
I'm no hero, just a yordle with a hammer.
Poppy's a tanky bruiser with some great built-in tankiness in her kit and great roams. She then has some very solid CC as long as she's able to use her heroic charge against terrain. She's then rather good at every stage of the game, but is really strong in that early game with her high burst damage. Lastly, by using her ultimate to knock somebody out of the team fight, she's able to make those fights a 4v5, giving your team a massive advantage. Now, although she's a relatively good champion, she does have no built-in sustain, which means she can struggle a lot against champions who can poke her down. To do all of her damage, she also has to go all in, which can be an issue because if the enemy jungler comes in for a gank, you're pretty much screwed. You can then be kited fairly easy because the only way you have to close a gap is your E, and it's only strong if it is against terrain. True damage is then strong against you as it is against most tanks, and your ultimate can save enemies if used improperly. For our Masteries, we go 12 Cunning and 18 Resolve, grabbing Grasp of the Undying as our Keystone Mastery. Since we already are a rather tanky champion, we grab Grasp because we don't actually have any sustain in our kit, and this at least gives us some in fights. In the Cunning side, we make sure we grab Bandit because this can actually generate a lot of gold for Poppy. In duels against tanky champions, we already are basically a wet noodle and we do no damage, but at least this will generate some income in the process. Furthermore, she kinda acts like a gangplank. He is a melee champion, but when he hits something with Parlay, he does get that bonus ranged gold. Same with Poppy in the way her passive works. When she does throw her shield, obviously that is ranged, but she still counts as a melee champion, so she will generate that extra gold. We end up going for a very generic rune page. We take attack damage reds, armor yellows, scaling magic resist blues, and attack damage quints. For the damage side of things, she makes best use of the attack damage, so that's why they're on the reds and quints, and of course we want to remain at least a bit tanky in the top lane, hence the armor and scaling magic resist. For our first summoner spell, you'll want to grab Flash. It's great for escaping or positioning so we're able to land our heroic charge on someone against a wall if we needed a different angle. For our second summoner, we'll want either Teleport or Ignite. Teleport is great if we plan on split pushing for a lot of the game, so we're still able to make it to team fights and objectives. If we're not actually needed, then we can shove a lane and try to take a tower. If we're instead looking for some added kill pressure, you can always take Ignite so you can get yourself snowballing. Now let's kick off our abilities, starting with our passive, Iron Ambassador. So this is her passive, which allows her to throw her buckler on a static cooldown. It will then land near you and be on the ground for up to 4 seconds, but if you do kill an enemy with it, it will bounce back to you automatically. This will deal between 10 and 180 based on level bonus magic damage, and when you do pick up the buckler, you will shield yourself for between 15 and 20% of your maximum health for 5 seconds. So the bonus damage obviously isn't that huge, but the shield can be really big if you are getting those early health items, which we will be. It's then also great because if you are throwing the shield, you will get extra gold from Bandit. So in the lane, pretty much just try to hit the enemy with this as much as you can, make sure you pick up the shield, and then go for a trade. Now our main way of doing some extra damage, our Q, Hammer Shock. This is the skill that smashes the ground in front of you and deals some physical damage to all enemies hit, and it's between a 35 and 115 base, plus 80% bonus AD, and 7% of the target's maximum health. The ground then slows all enemies standing on it and erupts after 1 second and deals the same physical damage to all enemies hit. So this of course is great for adding some extra damage in that lane phase and also clearing up some minions. The best way to use this ability, however, is if you can ease somebody into a wall to stun them, you could follow up with this Q so you'll get off the initial damage and that eruption damage. It has a great AD ratio, deals damage based on the maximum health of the target, making it great against those tanky top laners, and the cooldown goes down every time you level it, so of course we max this one first. Now for our W, Steadfast Presence. So, passively, your armor and magic resist are increased by 15%, and if you fall below 40% maximum health, it is instead 30%. When activated, you will gain bonus movement speed for 2.5 seconds and have a barrier around you for that duration, which will cause all enemies who dash within to be knocked down and dealt magic damage. This has a maximum bonus movement speed of 40% and is based off of your AP, which is at a 70% ratio. So this is a great ability for a bunch of reasons. First of all, passive tankiness is awesome on a tanky champion. Bonus movement speed is great to get into a position to get off that EQ combo. And then of course there's the fact that you can stop dashes coming into you. Like you can see against this Jarvan here, you can stop his EQ combo, so he can't even get on top of you. Now, your last basic ability, your E, Heroic Charge. Poppy dashes to the target enemy, dealing them physical damage and carrying them along with her. The damage is up to a 130 base plus 50% bonus AD. If they collide with terrain, she then deals the same physical damage to them again and stuns them, which is up to a 2-second stun. So this is the first part of your EQ combo, of course, as it is your E. When somebody is near a wall, you'll want to look for an angle so you can use your Heroic Charge into that wall and then follow up with a Q after. This is then also great for escaping. If you are in lane and you do need to escape if the jungler comes in for a gank, you can use your E on a minion to jump away. Of course, this isn't considered a reliable escape because you do rely on having that minion there in the first place. Last is our ultimate, Keeper's Verdict. For the first cast, Poppy channels for up to 4 seconds. She is able to move, but slows herself by 15%. If you do cancel this channel, its cooldown will be set to 30 seconds instead of the full duration. But for the second cast, Poppy smashes the ground, sending out a shockwave that travels in the target direction when it hits an enemy champion. A massive hammer erupts, dealing physical damage to all enemies around it. That physical damage is rather high at between 200 and 400 plus 90% bonus AD. Impacted enemies are knocked back towards their fountain. Releasing the ability instantly cancels the channel, damaging and knocking up all enemy champions around Poppy instead for 1 second. Poppy will have sight of these airborne targets, and they are rendered untargetable for that duration. The distance is then increased based on how long Keeper's Verdict was channeled. So there's 2 main ways of using this ability. The first is knocking somebody completely out of a team fight to make it a 4v5, and the second is of course to do a bunch of burst damage and kill a target. The main problem with the ability though is of course the fact that you could save somebody if it doesn't deal enough damage, as you are knocking them towards their own fountain. Another problem with the ultimate is that if you don't aim it correctly, of course you're going to just completely miss people, which is a pretty big issue. For our skill order, we of course start by taking 1 point into our ultimate whenever we can at 6, 11, and 16. For our basic abilities, we of course max our Q first, as it is the best way of doing some extra damage against the enemy champion, and you can clear minion waves. Then E is of course a damage ability as well, and if you can get somebody against a wall, it will deal a 100% AD ratio, so it does work really well in burst with your Q. Then of course, last, we do max our W. One early point will be great because we'll get a passive 15% bonus armor and magic resist, and we'll be able to stop charges and dashes coming into us. In the early game, try and throw your shield at the enemy laner as much as you can to get out some extra harassment and some bonus gold from bounty. If you are in a hard matchup, you can always use your Q, Hammer Shock, to farm from a distance. If you're able to line up a wall slam, then go in for a trade using your Heroic Charge to stun them against it, then follow up with that Hammer Shock. Lastly, if you did take teleport, make sure you're watching the map for those teleport ganks. Poppy has very potent ganks and roams, and this can easily get yourself or another lane snowballing. In the mid game, keep bullying that enemy laner as long as you're winning the lane or you're in a favorable matchup. Try and push down the tower as fast as you can, and then it's time to start looking for those roaming opportunities. Yet again, watch the map for teleport ganks or for when your team needs help at Dragon or if they're sieging towers so you can help out. Make sure you're using your Keeper's Verdict to get yourself or your teammates out of bad situations if you're outnumbered or if the enemy is trying to engage. This can also be great if you do see the enemy jungler coming in for a gank. Of course you're going to need wards for this vision, but if you do see them coming in for a gank, you can easily pop them out with this ultimate. In the late game, usually you're going to find yourself split pushing if you do have teleport available, or you'll be team fighting. In team fights, you'll be looking to get good picks on the enemy carries if there are walls around that you can Heroic Charge them into. You're then also able to use your Keeper's Verdict to split up fights and give your team an advantage. If the enemy does have some mobile assassins, try to hang out in the back for the first part of the fight so you can peel for your carries. You can use either your Heroic Charge to push them away, or if they do have some sort of dash or charge, Steadfast Presence is great for knocking them down. Now, here are 3 hard matchups for Poppy, and keep in mind there are a very high amount of hard matchups for Poppy, but these are the hardest ones I've found. If you know any other really hard matchups, leave that in the comments and a little suggestion on how to deal with those matchups. But anyways, the first one I've listed here is Trundle. He has a built-in sustain, which is just from stuff dying around him, and you have absolutely nothing for sustain. He's then almost impossible for you to duel against because of his Chomp and his Subjugate. Grab whatever farm you can, and try to avoid trades. Kayle is then pretty much an unwinnable matchup. She will do tons of damage to you with her Righteous Fury, and if you try to engage, she will kite you with Reckoning. The movement speed she gets from her heal will of course also help with that. As for gank, since she is rather gankable, it makes you take teleport so you can return to lane if you do get pushed out, or you can get other lanes snowballing with teleport ganks. Last here is Swain. He has a lot of sustain once he's level 6, and will be really hard for you to deal with. Pre-level 6, he's of course got a lot of annoying harass, so you're going to want to try to rush a Spirit Visage if you can. So now, let's look at your item build, and it starts with a Corrupting Potion and a Warding Totem. You could also go with a Doran's Shield if you were in an insanely hard matchup, but generally I like to stick with that Corrupting Potion. But anyways, for our core, we go for a Sunfire Cape, Iceborne Gauntlet, and a Spirit Visage. This will give you a ton of armor, a nice AoE burn, a slow, lots of cooldown reduction, and of course some magic resist from that Spirit Visage. For our boots, we of course have Merc Treads because we are rather kiteable, and not sitting in CC is a great thing. Against high AD comps, we of course have Ninja Tabbies, and if we are looking for full-on mobility, the Boots of Swiftness. Last, if we do want that extra 10% CDR, we of course can get the Ionian Boots, but this is something I don't opt for too much. I usually stick with Mercs or Ninjas. For our armor options, we have Deadman's Plate if we do want a little bit more mobility, we have the Randuins if we do want to take reduced crit damage and have a nice AoE slow, and Thornmail if we're against a full AD comp. As always, Guardian Angel makes an appearance in the build again, as coming back to life in that late game can be very crucial. If we are looking to add a little bit more split push, we can get the Zizirot Portal so we can drop it in a lane and then go somewhere else, and still end up pushing the one lane. Then if we are against a lot of AP and we would like some extra magic resist, we have the Banshee's Veil, and if we want to go for full on HP, we could get a Warmogs as well, as it does work really nice with our passive. If we want to go for defensive shields yet add more damage, we of course have the Maw and the Sterax Gauge. Just make sure you don't pick up both in the same build, as the shields don't stack. So for our first full build here, this is if we are against a high AD team, but there is one AP still in the team. We take our core with Ninja Tabbies, add a Randuins, and a Thornmail. Tons and tons of armor, and of course reflected damage from that Thornmail. If we were against a high AP team with a lot of CC, we would instead opt for the Merc Treads and then add a Maw and a Guardian Angel. A great way to have a ton of magic resist, a nice shield, the ability to come back to life if they do end up killing us, and of course some relatively nice damage as well. But that's pretty much all I've got to say on Top Lane Poppy. If you guys did like the guide, please make sure you thumb it up, and if you really liked it, you can always subscribe. You can also follow us on Twitter at egaming_TV. We do skin giveaways there, and we're actually starting one tonight, so if you are watching this guide on the day it came out, make sure you head over there. If you're also interested in joining me on the Summoner Circle podcast, that will also be in the video description as well. But anyways, thank you guys a ton for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace!